And so, the Solomon Islands has had a relationship with China and Chinese companies for much longer than just since the switch in 2019, right? What kind of business interactions have you had with China? For example, logging.
Right. So logging is the big one. The relationship is such that China is the main market for logs from the Solomon and I suppose other parts of the world as well. So that's where because of that market and we noted in the Solomons that mainly it's the Malaysian Chinese, I suppose, who participated in the logging industry in the Solomons for a long time, and it's a very messy industry. I know it's obviously a very corrupt one, and they set the rules. They even have a forest association that are mainly mainly composed, or the composition of the forest associations are mainly loggers. Those people who are foreigners, especially the Malaysians and others who are in the industry. So they sort of like capture the whole thing, whereas the people who have the resources, in this case the Solomon Islanders, are just participants that have very little influence in ensuring their resources are more beneficial to them. And this group even affect the way the government, put its laws and regulations in terms of the forest industry. So that is a big thing, like, because the industry is able to support, political or politicians within Solomon Islands. They have that relationship which is, at the end of it, it's their interest that is paramount more than the interest of any common person in the Solomons.
So these sort of foreign and Chinese-run companies, they come in to extract lumber, and they also set policy, and they get their politicians elected.
That's exactly. So if you look at the logging for that matter, say example, this 100%, the operations is made up of 100%, package. Of that 100%, 60% of whatever is earned through the operation belongs to the foreign companies. And then I think 20% belongs to the government in terms of the normal, tax and export and all these duties. And the resource owners ended up with, I think it's another 20%, but of the 20%, 5% of it goes to the license holder, the person that holds the right over the forest in terms under the current laws of the Solomons. And the resource owners or the tribes that own on these resources, they took 5%, and even the 5% and the 15% that belongs to the people in the Solomons, they are even taxed by the government. So you can see there is already, imbalance of how the industry really supports people. Most of it would end up with foreign companies, and this thing is not set in law; it's set by practice. And the practice, the argument behind the practice is that the operators incur more cost than others. Whether that is true or not, there has to be a meaningful analysis of these things so that people understand. But there hasn't been any such thing. Of their interest in the industry, because they take the big portion of it, they would make sure that you know what their interest in it's protected through ensuring the politicians that they support ended up within the government system to protect that interest of theirs.
Well, how about the logging jobs? Like, are at least the jobs, the people who actually are the lumberjacks, are those Solomon Islanders?
It's a mix of Solomon Islanders, and mostly when you look at the job, the higher end ones has to be foreigners, people from Malaysia who, operate, camp masters or who operate the heavy vehicles and all that. It's only the smaller ones like felling of trees with chainsaws that belongs to the laborers from the Solomons. But the higher paid ones within that industry also are held by foreigners who have been imported in Solomon Islands in under the arguments that they are cheap cheap labor of some sort. So those are the things that really happen with the forest, the logging industry. And then recently, because there were reports that were produced saying that the logs have run out, the logging companies have now shifted towards the mining industry, and they have their, the politicians that they support readily waiting there to ensure what they ventured into is supported by the government system.
So China's basically stripping the Solomon Islands of all its resources.
I would agree. It's their market. It's their market that that is feed on the logging industry in the Solomons. If there is no market for it, I wouldn't. It might be logged, but maybe in the practice, maybe controlled, by the markets. There were standards set by the markets that the producers need to at least follow to ensure the practice is properly managed at the country level. But at the moment, there's very little of these things happening, and they were even what they call price transferring within that mechanism, that the logs are paid at a lower price, and as it goes through the process, it's been paid at a higher price that is not known by the locals.
Do you think Sogavare has listened to people's concerns?
Well, we have to look at the sort of like the evidence out there. What has he done that would reflective of him being a listener to the concern in the Solomons? So far, it has not been the case. If you followed him closely, his political journey is a one that is full of controversies, things that he has done, and the way he ended up in the prime minister's position has always reflective of someone who looks for power to ensure he is in that position, to ensure what he thinks and what he thinks best is good for the people. So if you look closely at sort of any relationship, there is no evidence in my view that would say that, look, he's doing this, he has done that, and that's what people want. So that has not been the case, and we have seen riots and concerns where people came about and unfortunately ended up in a lot of distractions.
Now, you mentioned the riots, and last November 2021, there were pretty substantial riots in Honiara, the capital of the Solomon Islands. What were those about? How did they relate to Sogavare and to China?
So to get an idea about how that end up the way it ended up, you can look back to the history of Solomon Islands, especially the political history. And what has happened in November is not an isolated thing. There was riot in 2006. There was the ethnic crisis that we have had from 1998 to 2003. And even that, before the country went into independence, there was already division amongst the different islands, province in the Solomon, that concerns political powers should be given to people and devolution of functions to the provinces. So Sogavare was there when ethnic crisis happened. He was the prime minister during that time. I mean, when the Townsville Peace Agreement was signed, he was there during the 2026 riots, and he's still here. I mean, in the November riots. The fundamental thing is there's nothing done by the government to address the concerns that the people have in regards to political issues and how the resources of the country is run. For example, under the Townsville Peace Agreement and Part 4 or 5, I suppose, there was clear requirements that the government should address the issues concerning Guadalcanal and Malaita Province in terms of development. So those are the same concerns, I think, legacy concerns that still come through without being addressed by the government. And what they are doing is trying to suppress people not to talk against the government, and hoping that what they say is what the people want.
So what has the government's response been since the riots in November? Have they changed anything?
Well, if there is anything that has changed, they have now signed an agreement with China to bring in more force to suppress people. I think that's the only change we can see.
There was a report that I had read that said China had offered to send a number of its own security forces along with weapons and armor and some other gear. But it was unclear whether China actually ended up sending those soldiers. Do you know what happened with that?
From when the document was leaked concerning that issue, the government came out and said that they have not agreed on that matter. But for me, for a lot of Solomon analysts, it's the secretiveness of the government, whether what the government says is truthful or not. Because so far things have not been truthful. So who should believe what the government said? After all, there are things that the government has not properly done and have not informed the public at large about its doings. So yeah, from them, they came out and say yes, there was a request made by the embassy in the Taiwan, the Chinese embassy in the Solomons, but it ended up being not approved by cabinet.